Welcome to Beat Diabetes, and we're going to be talking about tortillas. I put on my second patch from the Dexcom Stelo the other day and thought it's time to put that on and run a bunch of food tests just to show you how foods affect me. So everything went well. I was able to get it on, but I had a problem, Houston. The problem was this one did not match my glucose meter closely. The previous patch that I used, the sensor, it was within a few points of my glucose meter. The one I call Mike, it's actually made by Precision, by the Freestyle company called a Precision Neo. And it matched well. This one did not, this second patch. And they came as part of the same package. They sent me two patches, two sensors. And this one was off by about 20 points. And I just couldn't get it to match up with Mike the meter, with the regular glucose meter that you actually stick your finger and get a blood drop. That's the bad news. The good news is they were both pretty consistent. Mike the meter, the glucose meter was consistent with the numbers I was expecting. And the CGM I was using, the Dexcom Stelo, it was consistently high, and I ran 4 tests with it, and I got whereas the glucose meter gave me an 88, the Stelo gave me a 109. Glucose an 85, Dexcom Stelo 109. Glucose 87, the Stelo 107, glucose 88, the Stelo 105. So they were both consistent within themselves, and that's sort of good news, because if you can figure out which one is right, then you can just subtract or add whatever numbers you need to figure out what your range is. Well, I was trusting that my regular glucose meter was more accurate than the Dexcom Stelo. And so I figured if I just deduct 20 points, I should be about accurate. But it bugs me to have to do that. I don't like it, but that's just how things are right now. I do trust a regular glucose meter to be accurate more than I trust a CGM. The regular glucose meter is going to stab you and get an actual drop of your blood, whereas the CGM, it's just going to get something they call interstitial fluid, which is just above where your blood is flowing. So it's not actually testing your actual blood, it's testing your interstitial fluid, whatever that is, which means, at least in my mind, it's probably not going to be quite as accurate, but some may argue with that. In any case, I felt like my meter was more accurate, and one reason for that is it always seems to line up when I get a laboratory A1C. The numbers that I'm getting on my meter where I stab my finger, if you average them out, they'll give me about a 5.0 A1C. And when I go and actually get an A1C, again, it's in the 5.0, 4.9, 5.1 range. So in the case with these tests that I'm going to run, or that I did run, I'm going to talk to you about, I deduct 20 points from my Stelo, and that gets me close to my regular glucose meter. So what was the test about? Well, the test was about tortillas. I have to admit, I love tortillas. I think tortillas are great. Whoever came up with the idea of a tortilla, well, I have to give him credit for that, although our normal tortilla is not going to be very friendly to your blood sugar. So I have to slam him for that. And so when I first went low carb, I just thought tortillas are out. Just live without them. Learn to live without them, Dennis. And then one special day, I found tortillas in the grocery store that said low carb, high fiber. And my eyes lit up, and I was thrilled, and I just assumed, well, if that's what they say, they shouldn't affect blood sugar much. And I found out later that it's not always quite that simple, and there are some so-called low-carb tortillas that can still raise people's blood sugar a lot. Part of it has to do with how they figure out that they're low-carb, and basically they're low net carb. They're not low-carb. the low-carb tortillas, they call them that. Well, this one, it doesn't even say it. This is my particular brand that I like, and I fairly well trust it. Extreme wellness, high fiber, carb friendly. And that doesn't mean it doesn't have carbs. It has actually 16 grams of carbs per tortilla. What it means is that they have somehow crammed and jammed all the ingredients together, and there are a lot of ingredients. And this is not a natural food very well. There's too many ingredients and artificial stuff thrown together, but they cram it and they jam it and they glue it, not literally glue it, but they put it all together and pack it so tight, they figure it becomes fiber. And therefore, if it flushes out of your system before you have a chance to dissolve it and your body has a chance to absorb it, it's not going to affect your blood sugar, which is true. But not everybody empties their stomach and empties their colon at the same rate. And if that stuff stays in your body too long, it will start getting dissolved and it will start affecting blood sugar. And you may have one day in your life where you're moving things in and out quickly, and another day where it just there's a logjam in your colon. And so that can have an effect. But this particular one has 16 grams of carbs, but 12 grams are what they call fiber. It's not, in my mind, it's a sort of an artificial fiber where they take all kinds of ingredients and just pack them and jam them and glue them and whatever it is they do until they figure they cannot break free. And they're just going to pass right through you. Ideally, that will happen. In real life, doesn't always. So anyway, I decided to do a test. And I decided to test a store-bought, low-carb tortilla, this Extreme Wellness brand. And then I was going to test it up against a normal tortilla that doesn't even boast about being low-carb or boast about being high-fiber. It's just this, and the brand I chose is this one. It's called Mission Fajita Grande. And it has 21 grams of carbs, 1 gram of fiber, so 20 grams of net carbs involved there. Doesn't even pretend to be keto-friendly or anything like that. And then the third tortilla I wanted to test was kind of a homemade microwave version where you take 3 ingredients. One is almond flour, and some of you that may know this particular container say, hey, that's a coconut flour container. But when we empty them out, we put other things in them. So I wrote the word almond so I wouldn't forget that this is not coconut flour, it's almond. Another ingredient is whole psyllium husks, and we'll put the recipe down below in the description. And you're taking a tablespoon of each of these, and then one is called whey protein isolate. And then I also add some heavy whipping cream and an egg. And you just stir it up in a bowl. And it's kind of a soupy mixture. It's not very thick at all. And then you pour it over a plate, or in my case, I've got these Teflon mats. And I literally put them in the microwave first, the mat first, and then I pour it over there, spread it out with a spoon until it covers it well. Run about 90 seconds in the microwave, take it out, boom, I've got my tortilla. It works well. Now, let's talk about what we did, and we made pizza with each one of these. Essentially, when you're making pizza with a tortilla, and it's just one, it's not top and bottom, it's not 2 on the bottom like I used to do in my early days. It's just 1 on the bottom, and then you sprinkle, you put some spaghetti sauce, and I got this at Walmart. It's just called pizza sauce, but it only has 4 grams of carbs for a quarter. Where is that? Here it is. 4 grams of carbs for a quarter of a cup, and 1 gram is fiber, so 3 grams. And I spread it thin. So we're not talking about just dumping a whole bunch of this sauce on there, and it doesn't seem to have much effect. So you put some sauce on the tortilla, and then you sprinkle some cheese. You put whatever you like. In this case, I used ham. I cut a piece of ham into pieces and sprinkled it over there, used some mushrooms. It came out of a can of mushrooms. And then sprinkle some more cheese over it. Put it in the oven at 460. And your oven may be different, but for mine, 460 works. And did it for 12 minutes, and boom, take it out. Let it cool for a few minutes. You've got yourself a nice little personal pizza. Not big, And normally it wouldn't fill me up if I was really wanting to get full, but when I have it for dinner, I don't worry about that because I don't expect to get too full for dinner anyway. I like to do a nice light dinner. So, 3 different pizzas with 3 different types of tortillas. Let's talk about them. First, we'll talk about the store-bought low carb, which is the Extreme Wellness store-bought low carb beforehand, based on Mike the Meter, not based on Charlie the CGM. Before I ate was 88. 2 hours afterwards, 104. 3 hours afterwards, 112. And 4 hours afterwards, 107. So even up to 4 hours, I still really wasn't at base level, but I didn't get much of a spike at all. All right, let's talk about the normal tortilla. The store-bought normal tortilla, 20 grams of carbs, doesn't pretend to be low carb, doesn't pretend to be keto. It is what it is. Started out at 89 beforehand. 2 hours after, I was at 131. And 3 hours after I ate, these are all after eating, I was at 123. 4 hours after eating, I was at 99. So that is the store-bought, regular, ordinary, run-of-the-mill, average tortilla. And finally, the microwave tortilla, the one that had the almond flour and the psyllium husk and what is this called? The whey protein isolate plus some heavy whipping cream and an egg. Make a soup out of it, pour it on a Teflon mat, microwave it, you got yourself a tortilla. Started out at 88 before eating. After eating, 2 hours later, 85. 3 hours after eating, 87. These are based on my glucose meter, not based on the CGM. I just deducted 20 points. And 4 hours after eating, 88. To me, that's the most astonishing of these 3 tests. I mean, basically no movement at all. Let me say it again. No movement at all. I was in the 80s the whole time. So this test basically went, and I don't want to brag, but it went exactly as I thought it would. I was pretty sure that the microwave tortilla, which had far less ingredients and didn't pretend to be one of these fake fiber kind of a tortilla, I was pretty sure that would be the best. It was by a large margin. I was pretty sure that the keto-friendly store-bought tortilla would be next best, and it was. And I was pretty sure that the normal tortilla that made no pretense of being keto would be the worst, and it was. And it went up to 131, which isn't terrible. I mean, I could have used a couple of these with something and gotten it higher for sure, but this was just one. And there was fat and there was protein involved with this meal, making a pizza out of it. So it's not going to allow it to jump up as high as it probably would if I just ate it by itself. So the moral of the story is a keto-type store-bought tortilla is far better than a regular tortilla. And if you have to go to the store and buy a tortilla, buy the keto-friendly type, the high fiber. It's not going to be perfect. It is going to give you some rise. Some are better than others. Some are worse than others. So you can experiment with different brands or just don't use them at all if they scare you that much. But the version that you make in the microwave was like absolute perfection. And I'll have to be honest, I didn't quite like the flavor as much as a normal tortilla. It wasn't bad. In time you put the spaghetti sauce and the cheese and everything on there, it wasn't bad at all, but it wasn't quite as good. So yeah, there's a little bit of sacrifice you have to pay to do it that way. Now, I did experiment one time where instead of using, what was it, the psyllium husk, I actually used lupin flour, and that tasted better. So I'm going to experiment some more with that. And it worked out fine as a base for a pizza. You say, Dennis, why even fool with it at all? Why not just eat a steak and an egg every dinner? Well, I like variety. And I like the taste of pizza. I've been eating pizza since I was a kid, back when people didn't eat pizza that much. In fact, I'll tell you a little secret. I never remember my parents taking us out for pizza at a restaurant. I never do. Now, I did with my children, but I don't remember my parents. There weren't that many pizza restaurants around, and the old school people, World War II generation, they just weren't really into pizza. But by the time I became a parent, I was, and I did take in fact, I worked for Pizza Hut for a little while when I was struggling and didn't have a regular job. But a regular pizza is a nightmare. Now, keep in mind that even the worst case, this store-bought, you're talking about a very, very thin base for that pizza. I mean, you talk about thin crust. Imagine if you had a deep dish pizza with big old thick crust on it. How high this would raise blood sugar. If this did some damage to me, how much worse would it be if I had a normal pizza? But even with this little skinny, scrawny, smallish base, it raised my blood sugar too high as far as I'm concerned, especially when there are better alternatives out there. One of the questions I've heard frequently is, how in the world did you and Benedicta meet? This question is fully answered in Benedicta's autobiography titled When Destiny Calls. Ben's story is fascinating, and the details of how we were brought together and the events in each of our lives in the years just previous to us coming together will amaze you. The story of our union has romance, drama, and a touch of the miraculous. Order Benedicta's autobiography and be prepared to be inspired and fascinated at how God brings His children together in His way and in His time.